So, you did it. You found the perfect house, your offer was accepted, and you just signed that mountain of paperwork. Congratulations! But you know that moment that feels like the finish line? It's really just the start of a brand new race. So, let's dive into this super important period. We're going to break down everything that happens between signing that contract and finally getting those keys, and turn all that uncertainty into pure confidence.
This is the big question, right? Every home buyer is thinking it. You've agreed on the price, you've signed on the dotted line, but the house isn't quite yours yet. Right now, there's a whole team of people jumping into action behind the scenes. So what are they all doing? And more importantly, what do you need to do next? Let's get into it.
Okay, here's our game plan. First, we'll get a bird's eye view of the whole process. Then, we'll untangle this thing called title. After that, we'll figure out what a home inspection really tells you. Then we'll decode that final, all-important financial statement. And we'll finish up with the moment you've been dreaming of, getting your keys.
The second that contract is signed by both you and the seller, a countdown clock officially starts ticking. This kicks off a whole chain of events, all these vital, interconnected steps that absolutely have to happen before that property can legally become yours.
You can really think of the whole thing in these 4 big stages. And guess what? You've already knocked out the first 2. Now, with that signed contract in hand, we're diving into stage 3. And this is where the real heavy lifting happens. Your lender is finalizing the loan, the title company is digging into the property's history, and you're getting the home inspected.
So, the big question is, how long does all this take? Well, for a typical home purchase, you're usually looking at about 30 to 45 days. That's the sweet spot, the time needed for your lender, the title company, and the inspector to do all their crucial work. All right, let's talk about a step that is absolutely critical. See, before a bank is going to hand over hundreds of thousands of dollars, and before you invest your life savings, everybody involved needs to be 100% certain that the seller actually has the legal right to sell the property. This is where proving clear title comes in. Honestly, it's kind of like a background check, but for the house itself. The first part of this background check is building what's called the chain of title. A researcher at the title company will literally trace the ownership of that property owner by owner all the way back to the very beginning. What they're looking for are any broken links or weird handoffs in that chain that could spell trouble down the road. Now, it's really important to know the difference between these two things. The abstract of title, that's the history report. It's the whole story of the property, based on all the public records. But the title insurance policy, that's your modern-day shield. It's an insurance policy that says, hey, if some long-lost heir or a past creditor pops up with a claim on your new home, don't worry, we'll defend you and cover the financial loss. And this is really why it matters so much. This insurance protects your huge investment from some really serious, hidden dangers. I mean, think about it. An unpaid bill from a contractor a previous owner hired, a forged signature on a deed from 50 years ago, a simple filing error at the courthouse. Any of these could threaten your ownership. Title insurance is your defense against those kinds of nasty, expensive surprises. Okay, so we've covered the property's legal history. Now it's time for its physical checkup. The home inspection is your best chance to get an expert, unbiased opinion on the actual condition of the house, from the roof all the way down to the foundation. This quote right here perfectly sums up what an inspector really does. They're not there to tell you if the furnace is old or if the dishwasher is a cheap brand. Their job is to answer one basic question for everything they check. On this particular day, does this thing do what it's supposed to do? It's a snapshot in time of the home's working condition. It is not a warranty for the future. Yeah, and it's just as important to know what an inspection isn't. It's not a guarantee that your AC won't break next summer. It's not going to tell you if you're getting a good deal on the house. That's the appraiser's job. And they're not going to be ripping open walls or making comments on the seller's paint choices. They're looking for significant defects, stuff that's broken or potentially unsafe. So we've checked the legal title, we've checked the physical condition, now we're entering the final financial stretch. This all comes down to the closing statement. And I know it can look pretty intimidating, but I want you to think of it this way. It's just a final, itemized receipt for the biggest purchase you'll probably ever make. The official name for this document is the closing disclosure, or just the CD. It's a standard 5-page form that spells out every single final term of your loan and lists every single cost and credit in the entire transaction. And by law, your lender has to get this to you at least 3 business days before you close. That's a huge consumer protection rule. It gives you time to review every number without being rushed at the last second. Now, out of all 5 pages, there is one number that is the most important: cash to close. This is your bottom line. It's the exact amount of money, down to the penny, that you need to have ready for your closing appointment.
So where does that number even come from? Well, page 3 of the disclosure breaks it all down for you. The top section adds up everything you owe. That's mostly the sales price plus all your closing costs. Then, the section below subtracts everything that's already been paid for you, like your initial deposit and, of course, the huge loan from your lender. The difference between those two is what's left for you to pay, your cash to close.
Now, one of the little details that goes into that calculation is something called prorations. It sounds kind of technical, but really, it's just a fair way to split the bills. For instance, the seller lived in the house for part of the year, right? So they should pay for their share of the annual property taxes. Prorations just make sure you only start paying for those kinds of expenses from the very day you become the owner. And honestly, the math is pretty straightforward. The title company just takes an annual bill, let's say it's a $2,200 tax bill, divides it by 365 days to get a daily cost, then they count up how many days the seller owned the house that year and multiply. Boom, that's the seller's share, and it shows up as a credit to you at closing. And now, the moment it all comes together. The finish line is finally in sight. You've looked over your closing disclosure, you've got your money ready to go, and your closing appointment is on the calendar. This is the day it all becomes real. So, what do you actually need to bring to that final meeting? It's a pretty simple but very important checklist. The seller brings the keys, garage door openers, and their ID. You, the buyer, need to bring your valid photo ID and what they call good funds. That means either a cashier's check for that cash to close amount or confirmation that you've already wired the money.
Okay, this is a super important detail that a lot of people miss. You get the keys upon closing and funding. Closing is the part where you sign all the final papers. Funding is when your lender actually sends the loan money to the title company. Both of those things have to happen. Sometimes funding is instantaneous, sometimes it can take a few hours, but only after the deal is officially funded is the transaction truly complete, and that's when you get the keys.
And just like that, it's done. The keys are in your hand, the deed is being filed with the county, and the house is officially yours. You have successfully navigated the entire journey from contract to closing. So now the only real question left is, what are you going to do first? Change the locks or figure out where the couch goes?